He thought money made him invincible. He thought a $5,000 suit gave him the right to treat people like garbage. Damien Sterling, a real estate mogul worth billions, looked at a struggling waitress and called her filthy trash in Arabic, laughing with his friends because he was certain she couldn't understand a word. He didn't know that the woman pouring his wine wasn't just a waitress. He didn't know she was fluent in 4 languages, or that she was the only witness to the crime he had just confessed to at table 4. What happens when the invisible girl suddenly speaks up? You're about to find out. This is the story of how one arrogant sentence cost a billionaire his entire empire. The rain in Seattle wasn't just rain. It was a cold, relentless sheet of grey that seemed to soak right through your skin and into your bones. For Alice Jenkins, standing outside the staff entrance of the Gilded Oak, it felt like the universe was trying to wash her away. She checked her reflection in the darkened glass of the door. Her uniform, a stiff black dress and a white apron, was dry, thank God, but her hair was frizzing, and the dark circles under her eyes were impossible to hide with cheap concealer. "Alice, you're late!" The voice boomed before she even fully stepped inside. It was Roger, the floor manager. Roger was a man who sweated profusely even in winter and believed that yelling was a form of effective leadership. "I'm sorry, Roger," Alice said, keeping her head down as she hurried to the locker room. "The bus broke down on 4th Avenue. I ran the last 6 blocks." "I don't care if you flew here on a dragon," Roger snapped, checking his watch. "Table 1 is reserved for a VIP tonight. If you mess this up, don't bother coming back tomorrow. Do you understand? Rent is due, isn't it?" Alice flinched. Roger knew she was desperate. He knew about her mounting medical bills for her father's dialysis. He knew she was 3 days away from eviction. That was why he put her on the hardest tables. He knew she couldn't say no. "I understand," she whispered. She quickly pinned her hair back, took a deep breath, and stepped onto the floor. The Gilded Oak was the kind of place where a salad cost more than Alice's weekly grocery budget. The lighting was low, the jazz was soft, and the smell of truffle oil and aged steak hung heavy in the air. At 7 p.m. sharp, the VIP arrived. The entire restaurant seemed to stiffen. Waiters straightened their ties. The host, a usually calm man named Peter, looked like he was about to faint. Walking through the door was Damien Sterling. Everyone in Seattle knew the name. He was the CEO of Sterling Horizons, a man who bought historic neighborhoods, leveled them, and built glass skyscrapers for the ultra-rich. He was handsome in a shark-like way, sharp jaw, cold blue eyes, and a suit that cost more than a car. He wasn't alone. He was accompanied by 2 other men in suits, and a woman who looked more like a model than a business associate. They were laughing loudly, disrupting the quiet atmosphere of the restaurant. Roger shoved Alice forward. "Go, table 1, and for God's sake, smile." Alice approached the table with a pitcher of ice water. Her hands were trembling slightly. She had read about Damien Sterling in the papers. He was known for 2 things: making money and destroying anyone who got in his way. "Good evening," Alice said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Welcome to the Gilded Oak. Can I start you off with—" Damien didn't even look at her. He held up a hand, silencing her while he finished a story he was telling his friends. "So I told the zoning commissioner, you can take the bribe, or you can take the unemployment line. He took the cash!" The table erupted in laughter. Alice stood there, frozen, the heavy pitcher sweating in her hand. She waited. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. They acted as if she were a piece of furniture. Finally, the woman at the table glanced up, annoyed. "Damien, the help is hovering." Damien slowly turned his head. His blue eyes raked over Alice, analyzing her worn shoes, her slightly frizzy hair, and the tiredness in her face. He didn't see a person. He saw an inconvenience. "Water," he said, pointing to the glass, "and bring the wine list, the real one, not the one you give tourists." "Yes, sir," Alice said. She poured the water with practiced precision. As she turned to leave, Damien leaned toward the man on his right, his CFO, a man named Arthur, using a whisper that wasn't quite quiet enough. "Look at her," Damien said. But he didn't say it in English. He switched effortlessly to Arabic. "Shuf hal mandhar, bet shaba el fara el mablula." "Look at this sight. She looks like a wet rat." Arthur, who clearly spoke the language as well, snickered. "Ya aki, min wain biji buhum? Hadamat am fachim wala malja." "Brother, where do they find them? Is this a luxury restaurant or a shelter?" Alice froze. Her back was to them, her hand on the tray. They didn't know. How could they? Alice Jenkins was just a waitress in Seattle. They didn't know that before the medical bills, before her father got sick, and before the bankruptcy that ruined her family, she had spent 6 years living in Dubai and Beirut. They didn't know her father had been a diplomat. They didn't know she held a degree in linguistics. She understood every single word. She gripped the tray tighter, her knuckles turning white. "Just keep walking," she told herself. "You need this tip. You need this job." She walked away, the sound of their cruel laughter following her into the kitchen. "He's a nightmare," Alice muttered, leaning against the stainless steel counter in the kitchen. Roger appeared out of nowhere. "Less talking, more serving. They ordered the Chateau Margaux 1998. Don't drop it, or you'll be paying for it for the next 10 years. He shoved the dusty, expensive bottle into her hands. Alice took a deep breath. She had to go back out there. She had to serve the man who had just called her a wet rat. She smoothed her apron and marched back to table 1. When she arrived, the mood at the table had shifted. The laughter was gone, replaced by a tense, hushed intensity. They were leaning in, heads close together. Alice approached silently to present the wine. Usually, a waiter announces the bottle. But seeing how deep they were in conversation, she decided to open it quietly on the side table so as not to disturb them. This turned out to be a mistake for Damien, but a revelation for Alice. Damien was speaking in Arabic again, clearly assuming that in a Pacific Northwest steakhouse, it was a secret code. "Is the transfer complete?" Damien asked, his voice low and guttural. "Not yet," Arthur replied, swirling his water. "The environmental report on the darker side of the port came back negative. The soil is toxic, Damien. If we build those condos, people will get sick within 5 years. The EPA will never sign off on it." Alice paused, the corkscrew hovering over the bottle. She knew exactly which project they were talking about. The Bayside Heavens project. It was all over the news. Affordable luxury housing for young families. Damien laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Who cares about the EPA?" Damien said in Arabic. "I met with Councilman Miller last night. I gave him the package. He's going to bury the toxicity report and replace it with the fake one we created in June. The one that says the soil is pristine." Alice's heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't just arrogance anymore. This was fraud. This was criminal. They were planning to build homes on toxic waste and bribe a city official to hide it. "Are you sure Miller is solid?" the woman asked. "He has gambling debts," Damien scoffed. "He took the $100,000 this morning. The wire transfer went through the offshore account in Cayman. It's untraceable. We break ground next month. By the time anyone gets sick, we'll have sold the units and dissolved the LLC. We walk away with $80 million profit. Clean." Alice felt sick. She thought of the families saving up for those condos. She thought of the kids playing in toxic dirt. She was trembling so hard she could barely hold the bottle. She focused on the cork. Pull, twist, pull, pop. The sound of the cork coming out seemed incredibly loud. Damien jumped slightly and turned to look at her. He looked annoyed that she was still there. He switched back to English, his tone dripping with condescension. "You're taking a long time," he sneered. "Is the bottle too complicated for you? Do you need a manual?" He looked at his friends and switched back to Arabic, delivering the final insult. "Hiya akid ma bitham shi ghair kif tghassil el sahun. Miskina." She surely doesn't understand anything other than how to wash dishes. Poor thing. Something inside Alice snapped. It was the poor thing that did it. It wasn't pity, it was dehumanization. It was the assumption that because she was serving him food, she had no brain, no history, and no worth. She finished pouring the wine, a perfect 4-ounce pour. She set the bottle down on the table with a firm thud. She picked up the tray. She looked Damien Sterling dead in the eye. The fear was gone. The desperation to keep the job was replaced by a cold, burning fury. She didn't scream. She didn't cause a scene. She simply spoke. "Istamta bil nabidh, Sayyid Sterling. Wa atamanna an yakuna ta'amhu afdal min al-sumum allati takhtat li bay'iha lil-a'ilat." Enjoy the wine, Mr. Sterling, and I hope it tastes better than the poison you are planning to sell to families. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavier than the rain outside. Damien's hand froze halfway to his glass. His face went pale, draining of all color. Arthur's mouth dropped open. The model stared at Alice as if she had just grown a second head. Alice didn't look away. She held his gaze, letting him see the intelligence and the anger she had been hiding. "And by the way," she added in perfect crisp English, "I'm not a wet rat. I'm a human being. And you have a little bit of spinach in your teeth." She turned on her heel and walked away. The restaurant was quiet, but behind her, at table 1, it felt like a bomb had just gone off. Alice marched into the kitchen, her heart racing at 1,000,000 miles an hour. She knew what was coming. You don't humiliate a billionaire and get away with it. Roger was standing at the pass, looking at her face. "What happened? Why is table 1 looking at you like they want to kill you?" "Because," Alice said, untying her apron, "I think I just started a war." Before Roger could respond, the kitchen doors swung open. It wasn't Damien. It was his bodyguard, a massive man with a headset. "You," the bodyguard pointed at Alice. "Mr. Sterling wants to see you. Now." "She's busy," Roger squeaked, trying to intervene. "Now," the bodyguard repeated, "or I drag you out." Alice took a breath. She smoothed her skirt. "It's okay, Roger." She walked back out onto the floor. Damien hadn't moved. He was staring at the table, his hands clenched into fists. As Alice approached, he looked up. The shock was gone. In its place was a look of pure, calculated malice. He stood up slowly, towering over her. "You speak Arabic," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "I do," Alice replied. "So you heard everything. Enough to know you belong in jail, not a 5-star restaurant." Damien let out a short, dry laugh. He stepped closer, invading her personal space. "Listen to me closely, you little spy. You heard nothing. If you breathe a word of what you think you heard to anyone, the press, the police, your mother, I will destroy you. I will make sure you never work in this city again. I will find your family, and I will bury them in legal fees until they starve." He pulled a $100 bill from his pocket and crumpled it up, throwing it at her feet. "For your silence," he sneered. "Now, get out of my sight before I have you arrested for theft." "Theft?" Alice asked, confused. "Roger!" Damien shouted, his voice booming across the restaurant. "Manager, now!" Roger came running. "Yes, Mr. Sterling? Is there a problem?" "This waitress." Damien pointed a shaking finger at Alice. "She just tried to steal my watch while pouring the wine. I want her fired. Immediately. And I want the police called." Alice gasped. "That's a lie. I never touched him." Roger looked at Damien, the billionaire VIP, and then at Alice, the broke waitress. The calculation in Roger's eyes took less than a second. "Alice," Roger said coldly, "pack your things. You're done." "Roger, please. He's lying because I heard him." "Get out!" Roger screamed. "Before I call the cops myself." Alice looked around the restaurant. People were staring, whispering. No one stood up for her. She was just the help. He was the king. Tears pricked her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She bent down, but not to pick up the money. She picked up the crumpled bill and dropped it into Damien's wine glass. "Keep it," she said. "You're going to need every penny for a lawyer." She walked out the front door, into the pouring rain, without a job, without money, and with a billionaire enemy who wanted her dead. But Damien Sterling had made a critical error. He thought Alice was alone. He didn't know that the wet rat had kept one contact from her old life. A contact at the FBI who had been trying to nail Damien Sterling for years. Alice reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. Her hand shook as she dialed. "Agent Miller," she said, when the line clicked. "It's Alice. I have the recording." She hadn't just listened. She had her phone in her apron pocket, voice memo running, the entire time. The adrenaline that had carried Alice out of the Gilded Oak began to fade the moment she stepped onto the night bus, replaced by a cold, shaking dread. She sat in the back, clutching her phone like a lifeline. She had called Agent Miller, her father's old contact. He had sounded groggy but alert the moment she mentioned Damien Sterling's name. "Don't go home," Miller had said. "If he knows who you are, he knows where you live. Meet me at the Starlight Diner on 4th in an hour. Stay in public view." Alice looked out the window. The city lights blurred into streaks of neon. She wanted to listen to Miller, but she couldn't. She had to go home. Her father's heart medication was in the bathroom cabinet. It cost $400 a bottle, money she didn't have to replace. If she didn't get it, he would be in the ER by morning. "I just need 5 minutes," she told herself. "Just grab the meds, my passport, and a change of clothes." She got off the bus 2 stops early, circling back to her apartment building through an alleyway just in case. She lived in a crumbling brick building in a neighborhood that gentrification hadn't quite reached yet. As she turned the corner onto her street, she froze. There was a car parked directly in front of her building, a sleek, black Escalade with tinted windows. It looked like a shark swimming in a goldfish pond. The engine was idling, the exhaust pumping white clouds into the cold air. Alice pressed herself against the wet brick of the corner store, heart hammering. He's already here. It had been less than 45 minutes. She watched as the front door of her apartment building opened. Her landlord, Mr. Henderson, walked out. He was a grumpy old man who usually spent his evenings watching TV in his underwear. Tonight, he was wearing a coat over his pajamas, looking terrified. A man in a suit, one of the men who had been at the restaurant with Damien, stepped out of the Escalade. He handed Mr. Henderson a thick envelope. Mr. Henderson nodded vigorously, pointing up toward Alice's window on the 3rd floor. The man in the suit gestured to 2 other men in the car. They got out, carrying crowbars. Alice clamped a hand over her mouth to stop a scream. They weren't there to talk. They were there to scrub her existence. Her phone buzzed in her hand, a text message from an unknown number. We have the apartment. We know about the sick father at Mercy General. Delete the recording. Bring the phone to the receptionist at the Gilded Oak by midnight, or we stop paying the hospital bills. You have 1 hour." Alice stared at the screen. The blood drained from her face. They knew everything. Damien Sterling didn't just have money. He had an army of data miners. They had found her identity, her address, and her weak point, her dad, in under an hour. She looked back at the building. The men were kicking open the front door. She couldn't get the meds. She couldn't save her clothes. She was officially homeless, and her father was a hostage to Damien's wallet. Tears of frustration, hot enough to burn, welled up in her eyes, but she wiped them away aggressively. No, she thought. If I give them the phone, they win, and they'll probably kill me anyway to tie up the loose end. She needed to disappear. Alice turned and ran. She didn't run toward the bus stop. That was too predictable. She ran toward the subway station, 3 blocks away. She kept her head down, pulling her hood up. As she swiped her pass at the turnstile, she saw it. The same black Escalade screeched around the corner, hopping the curb. The men inside had spotted her. "Hey, you!" one of them shouted, jumping out of the moving car. Alice vaulted the turnstile and sprinted down the escalator, taking the steps 3 at a time. She could hear heavy boots thundering behind her. "Stop her!" the man yelled. Commuters scattered, screaming. Alice didn't look back. She could hear the rumble of a train approaching. It was her only chance. She reached the platform just as the doors were dinging, signaling they were about to close. The train was packed. She threw herself through the closing gap. A hand grabbed the back of her coat. Alice screamed and twisted, the fabric tearing. The man had reached through the doors, his fingers clawing at her. He was strong, pulling her back. "Let go!" she shrieked. A construction worker standing near the door saw what was happening. He didn't ask questions. He saw a terrified woman and a man in a suit attacking her. He shoved the man's arm back. "Get off her, pal!" the worker shouted. The doors hissed shut, severing the man's grip. Alice stumbled backward into the crowd of strangers, gasping for air. Through the glass, she saw the man in the suit, slamming his fist against the moving train, his face twisted in rage. She was safe. For now. She sank to the dirty floor of the subway car, clutching her pocket. The phone was still there. The recording was safe. But she had nothing else. No home. No money. No meds for her dad. She looked at the phone again. She opened the file. Sterling, confession, oeponfore. "You want a war, Damien?" she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and hatred. "You just got one." The Starlight Diner was a relic of the 1950s, smelling of grease and old coffee. It was the kind of place where nobody looked at you, which made it perfect. Alice sat in the back booth, her hands wrapped around a mug of hot water. She couldn't afford the tea bag. "Alice." She looked up. Agent Miller had aged since she last saw him 5 years ago at her father's retirement party. His hair was grayer, his face more lined, but his eyes were sharp. He wasn't alone. Beside him stood a younger man, maybe 30, with messy brown hair and a leather jacket that looked like it had seen a war zone. "Miller," Alice breathed, relief washing over her. "This is Liam Carter," Miller said, sliding into the booth. "He's an investigative journalist I work with sometimes. The Bureau, well, let's just say, the Bureau moves slow. Liam moves fast." Liam didn't smile. He looked at Alice with an intensity that was almost unsettling. "Miller says you caught a whale." "A shark," Alice corrected. She placed her phone on the table. Damien Sterling. He admitted to bribing Councilman Miller to hide toxic soil reports for the Bayside Heavens project. He also admitted to fraud and money laundering through the Cayman Islands. Liam raised an eyebrow. Big claims. You have proof? Play it, Alice said. Miller put in an earpiece and listened. As the recording played, Alice's interaction, the insults in Arabic, the confession about the bribe, Miller's expression darkened. Liam, leaning in to listen to the shared earpiece, actually let out a low whistle. When it was done, Miller sat back, looking grim. It's good, Miller said. It's very good. The Arabic makes it tricky. We'll need a court-certified translator. But the intent is clear. So arrest him, Alice said, her voice rising. Go get him right now. He's at the Gilded Oak. Miller sighed, rubbing his temples. It's not that simple, Alice. This is Washington. Two-party consent laws for recording. You recorded a private conversation in a private establishment without a warrant. A good lawyer, and Sterling has an army of them, will get this thrown out of court in 5 minutes. It's fruit of the poisonous tree. Alice felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. So, it was for nothing? I lost my job, my home, and put my father in danger for nothing? No, Liam interrupted. His voice was rougher than Miller's. It's not admissible in court, but it's intel. We know what he's doing. We know when he's doing it. Liam pulled a tablet out of his bag. He tapped the screen and spun it around to face Alice. You heard him mention a transfer happening soon, right? Liam asked. He said the wire transfer went through, but he needs to physically hand over the package to finalize the deal. He said the councilman was greedy. Right, Liam nodded. We've been tracking Councilman Miller, no relation to Agent Miller here, for months. We know he has a meeting scheduled for Friday night, but we didn't know where or how the payoff was happening. Your recording gave us the missing piece. Liam swiped the screen. An image of a glittering invitation appeared. The Sterling Gala. A night for the oceans. Friday night, Liam said. Sterling is hosting a massive charity gala on his private yacht. It's the perfect cover. High security. Private property. International waters if he sails out far enough. He's going to hand over the physical ledger or the hard drive with the faked reports there. That's the package. So get a warrant for the yacht, Alice said. We can't, Agent Miller said. Not on the word of a fired waitress with an illegal recording. No judge will sign it against a billionaire philanthropist. There was a heavy silence at the table. Alice looked between the two men. She saw the look in Liam's eyes. It was a look of calculation. There is one way, Liam said softly. No, Miller said immediately. She's a civilian, Liam. It's too dangerous. What way? Alice asked. Liam leaned forward. We need a witness inside, someone who can get close to Sterling, someone who understands Arabic, so they can listen for the signal that the exchange is happening. If we can catch him handing the package to the councilman on video, or if we can get our hands on that package before it disappears, we bury him. Alice laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. I'm a waitress he just fired. He knows my face. He has hitmen looking for me right now. I can't just walk onto his yacht. Liam looked at her. He studied her face, the high cheekbones hidden by fatigue, the intelligence in her eyes. He knows a waitress in a uniform with frizzy hair and no makeup, Liam said. He knows a wet rat. He doesn't know you. Liam reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek, black credit card. It wasn't a bank card. It was an expense account for his media firm. We have 48 hours, Liam said. My team can create a cover identity, a backstory. We can turn Alice Jenkins into, let's say, Sophia Al-Fayed, a wealthy investor from Dubai looking for real estate opportunities. You speak the language. You know the culture. You can walk right up to him, and he won't even recognize the woman he insulted. This is insane, Miller muttered. Alice, you don't have to do this. We can put you in protective custody." "Protective custody won't pay for my dad's dialysis," Alice said quietly. "And it won't stop Damien from building those toxic condos." She thought of the way Damien had looked at her. The poor thing. The way he had crumpled that money and thrown it at her feet. He thought she was trash. He thought she was powerless. If she ran, she would be looking over her shoulder forever. If she fought, well, at least she'd go down swinging. "If I do this," Alice said, looking at Liam, "I want 2 things. 1. The FBI moves my father to a private facility under a fake name tonight, with full medical care paid for." "Done," Miller nodded. "I can pull strings for a witness protection medical transfer. And 2, Alice's eyes narrowed. I want to be the one to put the handcuffs on him." Liam grinned. It was a sharp, dangerous grin. "I like her." "We have a lot of work to do," Liam said, checking his watch. "You need a wardrobe, a haircut, a dossier on every person attending that gala, and a crash course on how to wear a wire without getting killed." Alice took a deep breath. She reached out and took the black card from the table. "My name isn't Alice anymore," she said. "Tell me about Sophia." 48 hours was barely enough time to breathe, let alone construct an entirely new human being. Liam's loft in downtown Seattle became a war room. Whiteboards were covered in timelines, photos of gala attendees, and detailed maps of Sterling's mega yacht, the Poseidon's Wrath. "Alice Jenkins is dead," Liam said, pacing the floor as a team of stylists, people he called in favors from, worked on Alice. She was a tired waitress, worried about rent. Forget her. You are Sophia Al-Fayed. You grew up between London and Dubai. Your family money is old, quiet, and endless. You don't ask for things. You take them. You are bored by mediocrity and impressed only by ruthless efficiency. Do you understand? Alice nodded, her head heavy with foil wraps, as a colorist transformed her frizzy brown hair into a sleek, glossy sheet of obsidian black. "Tell me about your portfolio, Sophia," Liam barked. "I specialize in high-risk emerging markets and distressed assets," Alice recited, her voice steadier now. "I'm looking to diversify into North American real estate, but I find the regulatory environment tiresome." "Good. Tiresome. That's exactly the kind of word Damien uses." When the stylists were finished, Alice stood before a full-length mirror. She gasped. The woman staring back wasn't the wet rat. She wore a floor-length gown of emerald green silk that clung to her frame like liquid money. The neckline was daring, designed to draw the eye, but it also served a tactical purpose. It framed the necklace Liam fastened around her throat. It was a stunning piece, a platinum chain holding a solitaire diamond the size of a grape. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Liam said, adjusting the clasp. "It costs more than my apartment, and the center of that diamond is a 4K ultra-wide camera lens streaming directly to me and Agent Miller in the van parked at the marina." He handed her a tiny, flesh-colored earpiece. "Put this in your right ear. Keep your hair over it. I'll be in your head the whole time. If I tell you to run, you don't ask why. You run." Alice placed the earpiece in. It was almost invisible. "Are you ready?" Agent Miller asked, entering the room. He looked nervous. "The wire transfer for your father's care is confirmed. He's safe at St. Jude's private wing." Alice touched the cold diamond at her throat. She thought of her dad, safe for the first time in months. She thought of Damien's sneer. She turned from the mirror. Her eyes, enhanced by smoky makeup, were hard. "Let's go hunting," she said. The marina was bathed in floodlights. The Poseidon's Wrath was less of a boat and more of a floating palace, 3 decks of polished teak and chrome glowing against the dark water of the Puget Sound. A red carpet led to the gangplank, flanked by security guards the size of refrigerators. They were checking IDs, with scanners linked directly to Interpol and DHS databases. Alice stepped out of the black town car Liam had hired. The cool night air hit her bare shoulders. Her heart was doing backflips, slamming against her ribs so hard she thought the camera necklace would vibrate. "Breathe," Liam's voice whispered in her ear. "You own this dock. You own that boat. Walk like it." Alice lifted her chin. She adopted the bored, slightly disdainful expression she'd seen on the wealthy patrons at the Gilded Oak for years. She walked toward the security checkpoint, her heels clicking rhythmically on the pavement. "Name?" The lead guard grunted, holding out a scanner. "Sophia Al-Fayed," Alice said, her voice cool, accented slightly with the clipped tones of the British schooling Liam had invented for her. She handed him the passport Liam's team had forged. It was a masterpiece. The guard scanned it. The machine beeped. A green light flashed. "Welcome aboard, Miss Al-Fayed," the guard said, his tone instantly respectful. He unhooked the velvet rope. Alice stepped onto the gangplank. "Did I just hold my breath for 30 seconds? "You're in," Liam whispered, sounding relieved. "Now, the hard part. Find the target. He'll be on the main deck, probably near the bar, soaking up adulation." Alice stepped onto the deck of the Poseidon's Wrath. It was overwhelming. A live orchestra played Mozart in the corner. Champagne flowed like water from ice sculptures shaped like dolphins. The air smelled of expensive perfume, sea salt, and immense wealth. There were at least 200 people on board. Senators, tech moguls, socialites. And there, in the center of it all, holding a crystal flute of champagne, was Damien Sterling. He looked different here. At the restaurant, he was a customer. Here, he was a god. He was laughing, head thrown back, looking utterly untouchable. Alice felt a wave of pure nausea. The urge to turn and run was overwhelming. She was just a waitress in a borrowed dress. He would take one look at her, and know. "Alice," Liam's voice was sharp in her ear. "Don't freeze. He's just a man who is about to commit a felony tonight. You are the only one who can stop him. Move." Alice closed her eyes for half a second. She pictured the Bayside Heavens blueprints Liam had shown her, the playground built right over the most toxic soil sample. She opened her eyes. The fear was gone, replaced by cold purpose. She grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and started walking straight toward Damien Sterling. Damien was in the middle of a story, surrounded by a sycophantic circle of admirers, including Councilman Miller, the man taking the bribe. "So I told the harbour master, you can either let me dock my 200-foot yacht, or I can buy the marina and fire you." Damien laughed. The circle laughed dutifully. Alice stepped right into the gap in the circle. She didn't wait for a pause. She just appeared, a vision in emerald green, effectively cutting off a senator mid-chuckle. Damien stopped laughing. He looked annoyed at the interruption, his blue eyes snapping toward the intruder. Alice met his gaze head-on. She didn't smile. "Masa al-Khair, Sayyid Sterling," Alice said smoothly, her Arabic flawless, rich, and distinctly upper-class Gulf dialect. "Good evening, Mr. Sterling." Damien's annoyance vanished instantly, replaced by surprise and intrigued calculation. Arabic was his secret language, the language of his hidden deals. To hear it spoken here by a stunning woman he didn't recognize threw him off balance. "Masa al-Nur," Damien replied automatically in Arabic, his voice dropping an octave. "I don't believe we've met, and I rarely forget a face as striking as yours." "He's hooked," Liam whispered in her ear. Reel him in. Keep it in Arabic. It makes him feel safe. Alice took a slow sip of her champagne, letting him wait for her answer. "My name is Sophia Al-Fayed," she said in Arabic. "My family's consortium has been watching your expansion into the Pacific Northwest with interest." Damien's eyebrows shot up. The Al-Fayed name was legendary in investment circles. If this woman was real, she represented billions in potential liquid capital. "Al-Fayed," Damien said, testing the name. He stepped closer, effectively turning his back on the senator and the others, creating a private bubble of conversation amidst the party. "I wasn't aware your family was looking west." "We are always looking," Alice replied coolly, "but we prefer quiet opportunities. I hear Seattle can be loud, full of regulatory noise." She glanced sideways at Councilman Miller, who was hovering nearby, looking sweaty and nervous. Damien caught the glance. He smiled a shark-like smile. "Noise can be silenced, Ms. Al-Fayed, if you have the right acoustical engineers." "That's it," Liam said excitedly in her ear. "He's hinting at the bribery. Push him on it. Challenge his control." Alice gave a small, unimpressed sniff. "Perhaps. But I also hear that your recent project by the bay is facing environmental hurdles. My family does not like hurdles. We like paved roads." Damien's smile tightened. His eyes narrowed slightly, assessing her. He was wondering how much she knew. This was the dangerous part. If he sensed a trap, he'd have security throw her overboard. Alice held his gaze, channeling every ounce of Sophia's entitled boredom. "Rumors," Damien waved his hand dismissively. "Spread by jealous competitors. The Bayside project is cleaner than the water you're sailing on. In fact," he leaned in closer. His cologne was expensive, musk and cedarwood, the same scent that had choked her when he threw the money at her feet in the restaurant. It took everything in her not to flinch. "In fact," Damien murmured in Arabic, "I'm wrapping up the final compliance details tonight. It's going to be the most profitable residential zoning change in the state's history. If your consortium wants in, the window is closing fast." He was baiting her with the very crime he was committing. "Compliance details," Alice repeated, arching an eyebrow. "Tonight? At a party? That sounds unconventional." "I find unconventional methods yield the best returns," Damien grinned. He checked his platinum watch. "Look, Sophia, it's too loud down here. Too many ears. I have a private lounge on the upper deck. Why don't you join me up there in 10 minutes? We can discuss what a paved road looks like in Seattle." "Bingo!" Liam yelled in her ear, so loud Alice almost winced. "He's taking you to the handoff location. That's where he's going to give Miller the package." "Say yes, Alice. Say yes." Alice gave Damien a long, evaluating look, as if deciding whether he was worth her time. 10 minutes, she said. "Don't make me wait, Mr. Sterling. I hate waiting." "I wouldn't dream of it," Damien murmured, his eyes hungrily tracing her neckline right over the hidden camera. He turned and gestured sharply to Councilman Miller. The two men headed toward the stairs leading to the private upper deck, which was guarded by 2 massive security personnel. Alice turned away, walking toward the railing of the ship to catch her breath. Her hands were shaking violently. She clutched the cold metal railing. "You did it!" Liam's voice was thick with adrenaline. "You're going into the lion's den. The camera is working perfectly. We're going to get it all. Stay sharp, Sophia. This is endgame." Alice looked down at the dark water swirling below. She was about to walk into a private room with a man who had threatened to destroy her life, a man surrounded by guards on the open ocean. She wasn't Sophia Al-Fayed. She was Alice Jenkins, the waitress, and she was absolutely terrified. She pushed off the railing and headed for the stairs. The upper deck lounge was a different world. While the party below was a cacophony of Mozart and chatter, this room was silent, hermetically sealed, and smelled of leather and illicit intent. 2 guards stood outside the glass doors. Inside, Damien Sterling sat on a plush velvet sofa, a tumbler of whiskey in his hand. Across from him sat Councilman Miller, who looked like he was about to vomit. On the table between them lay a thick, leather-bound ledger and a silver hard drive. Alice stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind her, locking automatically. "Stay calm," Liam's voice buzzed in her ear. "The camera has a clear line of sight. I need you to get him to touch that ledger. We need to link him physically to the bribe." Damien looked up and smiled. It was a predatory smile. "Sophia," he said in English, gesturing to the seat next to him. "You're punctual. I like that." Alice sat down, smoothing her emerald dress. She crossed her legs, angling her body so the diamond pendant at her throat pointed directly at the table. "I told you, Damien," she said, keeping her accent thick and haughty. "I don't like waiting, and I don't like uncertainty. Is this the compliance meeting?" Damien laughed. He picked up the hard drive. "This," he said, tapping it, "contains the revised environmental impact study. It shows that the Bayside soil is as pure as mountain snow. And this," he placed his hand on the ledger, "is the payment schedule for our dear friend, the councilman. $10 million over 5 years, structured as consulting fees through a shell company in Panama." "Got it," Liam whispered. "Video and audio clear. He just confessed to international money laundering and bribery. We have enough to bury him." "Damien," Councilman Miller squeaked, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Should we be discussing this in front of her? She's a civilian." Damien waved a dismissive hand. "Sophia is one of us, Miller. She represents capital that makes your city budget look like a piggy bank. Besides," Damien turned to Alice, his eyes darkening with lust, "she understands the language of power. Don't you, Sophia?" He reached out and placed his hand on her knee. Alice's skin crawled. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to recoil, to slap him, to run, but she forced herself to stay frozen. "I understand power," Alice said coolly, removing his hand with a slow, deliberate movement. "But I also understand risk. How do I know this isn't a setup? How do I know you haven't been compromised?" Damien scoffed. He stood up, towering over the table. His arrogance was his shield, and it was about to be his coffin. "Compromised?" Damien sneered. "Who is going to touch me? The police? I own the police commissioner, the FBI. They've been trying to pin something on me for a decade and haven't found a single crumb. I am untouchable, Sophia. I am the king of this city. I can crush anyone who gets in my way, whether it's a rival developer or a wait list at a restaurant." "He's monologuing," Liam said. "Keep him talking. The Coast Guard is 2 minutes out. We need to get closer." "And what about the people?" Alice challenged, leaning forward. "The families who will live in those condos when they get sick?" Damien shrugged. It was a gesture of pure, unfiltered evil. "People get sick every day," he said. "That's life. By the time the cancer clusters show up, I'll be retired on an island in the Mediterranean with no extradition treaty. And you could be there with me." He moved closer, invading her personal space. "Drop the act, Sophia. I can see the hunger in your eyes. You want in on this deal, you want to win." Alice looked at him. She thought of her father lying in a hospital bed, his kidneys failing, worried about money. She thought of the wet rat comment. "I do want to win," Alice said softly, her voice shifting. "But not with you." Damien frowned. "What did you say?" Suddenly, the night air shattered. Whoop whoop! A siren, deafeningly loud, blasted from the water outside. Blue and red strobe lights flooded the cabin, turning the luxurious lounge into a disco of panic. A voice boomed over a megaphone. "This is the United States Coast Guard and the FBI. Heave to and prepare to be boarded. Armed agents are coming aboard." Councilman Miller shrieked and scrambled to grab the ledger. "Leave it!" Damien roared, grabbing the ledger back. "It's not illegal to have a book." The glass doors of the lounge shattered inward. "FBI, get on the ground, now!" Agent Miller, Alice's contact, was the first one through the door, wearing a Kevlar vest and holding a rifle. Behind him streamed a dozen agents. Damien stood frozen, the ledger in his hands. He looked at the agents, then at Alice. Confusion washed over his face. "What is this?" Damien hissed at her. "You set me up? Who are you working for? The Saudis? The Chinese?" Alice stood up slowly. She didn't put her hands up. Agent Miller nodded at her, signaling she was clear. "I'm not working for the Saudis, Damien," she said. Damien was tackled by two agents. They slammed him face first into the plush carpet. He struggled, screaming obscenities in English and Arabic. They yanked his arms back and clicked the cuffs on. Tight. Councilman Miller was weeping in the corner as he was zip-tied. Liam ran into the room, a camera in his hand, filming the entire perp walk. He winked at Alice. "Get him up," Agent Miller ordered. The agents hauled Damien to his feet. His nose was bleeding, ruining his tuxedo. He looked wild, furious, and utterly confused. He locked eyes with Alice. "You bitch!" he screamed. "I'll kill you. Do you know who I am? I will have you erased. You're nothing. You're a fake!" Alice walked over to him. She stood inches from his face. She reached up and unclasped the diamond necklace, the camera that had sealed his fate, and handed it to Liam. Then she reached up and pulled out the earpiece. She looked him dead in the eye. "You're right, Damien," she said. "Sophia Al-Fayed is a fake." She dropped the British accent completely. She switched to her natural voice, the tired, slightly raspy voice of a woman who had worked double shifts for 5 years. "But you've met me before," she said. Damien blinked. He squinted at her, trying to process the voice. Alice leaned in and whispered, intimately, in Arabic, "Shuf halmandar, Bet Shaba, El Fara, El Mablule." "Look at this sight. She looks like a wet rat." Damien's eyes went wide. His jaw literally dropped. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. The recognition hit him like a physical blow. "The waitress," he whispered. The water girl." "I told you," Alice said, stepping back and smiling, a real, genuine smile. "I'm not a wet rat, and you really should have checked for spinach in your teeth." "Get him out of here," Agent Miller commanded. "No, wait!" Damien screamed as they dragged him toward the door. "It's a mistake. She's a nobody. She's a waitress. You can't do this to me." But they could. And they did. Alice walked out onto the deck. The party guests were being corralled by agents. The music had stopped. The flashing lights of the police boats illuminated the dark water. Liam walked up beside her, holding 2 cheap beers he'd found in a cooler. He handed one to her. "To the wet rat," Liam grinned, clinking his can against hers. "To the wet rat," Alice replied. She took a sip. It was cheap, warm beer. It tasted like victory. Damien Sterling was denied bail. The video evidence from Alice's necklace, combined with the seized ledger, led to a 45-count indictment for racketeering, bribery, and environmental terrorism. His assets were frozen. The Gilded Oak was sold to pay his legal fees. Alice didn't go back to waiting tables. The story of the waitress spy went viral. Liam wrote the exclusive, and they split the book deal advance 50-50. It was enough to buy a small house with a garden, pay for her father's kidney transplant, and ensure she never had to pour another glass of wine for a rude billionaire again. But sometimes, when it rained in Seattle, she would walk past the old restaurant, look at the window where she used to stand, and smile. She had learned a valuable lesson. Be careful who you insult in a language you think they don't understand. You never know who is listening. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why you should never judge a book by its cover, or a waitress by her apron. Damian Sterling thought his money made him a god, but it was his own arrogance that handed a nobody the keys to his destruction. He learned the hard way that the quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous. What about you? Have you ever had a moment where someone underestimated you because of how you looked or what you did for a living? Or have you ever witnessed instant karma like this in real life? I want to hear your stories. Drop them in the comments down below. Let's expose the Damian Sterlings of the world together. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and remember, be kind. You never know who you're talking to.